2024 starts off exactly the way we wanted it to. That's now 5 straight wins for Duke men's basketball. Last night against Syracuse was awesome. We break it down on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with JJ Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. It's so exciting to have you here with us on January 3rd, 2024. Happy New Year to all of our Locked On Blue Devils listeners out there. On today's show, excited to talk about last night's win for Duke men's basketball over Syracuse, 86-66, the final score for our Duke Blue Devils. And we're going to break down the game today with our good pal Josh Cox on the show. If you have not done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free, wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star rating and written review. If you watch the show on YouTube, thank you for doing that. If you don't, go check us out at YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like this video. Share it with your friends. Follow us on X at LO_Blue Devils. And I'm there as well at _JJ_Jackson_. Last night, a big-time performance from the Duke men's basketball team, from Mark Mitchell's strong first half to going 8 for 8 from three-point range in the second half. There are so many different things to talk about in regards to last night's game. And who better to break it down than someone who was right there for the Duke Report. And now with us once again, it is Josh Cox here with us for the first time in 2024. Happy New Year to you, buddy. Last night was a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, man. Great way to start the new year for the Duke basketball program, that's for sure. Getting that first ACC win after stumbling there in Atlanta, Georgia Tech game. I think that was now 5 games ago. But I know for Duke, it was good to get off a good win, a home game, and start the new year off the right way.
So we've got a lot of things to talk about in regards to this game that we want to break down. Of course, Duke riding high off of a pretty dominant victory against Queens over the weekend. And to your point, now they're getting back into ACC play. Now you're at the portion of the season where you want to be playing your best basketball. Duke now has Tyrese Proctor back into the fold, trying to get him acclimated to being out there with his teammates once again. What was your thought around the vibe of this Duke team the past few games that you've seen now that they are in ACC play once again?
Well, certainly. I mean, after that Georgia Tech game, there's been an obvious shift in this team. They had a couple of games that Charlotte and I believe it was Hofstra, I'm not sure if that was Hofstra, but it was Charlotte. 2 games against teams that, obviously Duke should beat, but they were not just pushover games. And then they kind of got back. They got that big Baylor win. And now here they come in the ACC. I do believe that there was some sort of flip that was switched after that Georgia Tech game where they said, listen, we can't continue to play this way and be a successful team. I mean, at the end of the day. So you've seen Jared McCain, during these last 5 games really step his game up. Obviously, Filipowski's still doing his thing. But, and last night, you have somebody like a Mark Mitchell step up. And Mark was huge last night because in the first half, Filipowski, got in foul trouble, did not score, 1 point in the first half. And so to see a guy like Mark Mitchell, who, I'm not sure how much you've spoken about it last week, but, Dad gets on Twitter a little bit and says some things that obviously Mark, wasn't necessarily a part of, but still, had to kind of weigh over Mark a little bit, and to see him come out last night and really get off to that great start. I mean, that was as good as I've ever seen Mark Mitchell play in that first half.
Yeah, you can't always monitor what your folks are going to be out there posting on social media and that sort of thing. If people miss that entirely, his father was not too thrilled with the start to the season for Mark. Tell us a little bit more about that, Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I've never met his dad. I don't know that it was necessarily like straight criticism to Duke even. I believe it was like an odd way for a dad to call out a son. Is what it kind of felt like to me. But he was disappointed in Mark and Duke so far this season, and he even acknowledged in as far as people replying and him liking or whatever, like Mark shooting like 5% from the 3-point line. I mean, whose fault is that, right? The thing I will say about Coach Shire is he has stayed in Mark's corner. Mark has started every game, even with all these struggles shooting the basketball, right? Like I think you and I have spoken about this maybe offline, but like Mark looks a little bit like even more herky-jerky in his second season than he even did in his freshman season. So like it's kind of weird, but Shire stayed with him, and he does a lot of intangible things too, JJ. He's the kind of player who could score 3 or 4 points a game, but he could have 5 assists, he could have 10 rebounds, and he could have 4 steals and impact the game in other ways rather than just putting the ball in the basket. So, but yeah, that's what happened. His dad tweeted. Mark was asked about it after the game last night, and I was not there when he responded, but he basically said that's not him. That's his dad, and he loves Duke. He's thankful and grateful to be in Durham and playing for Duke. So.
And we're excited to have him. With performances like he had last night in the first half. What was the big difference? It was not, to let people know, it wasn't shots from the outside that we saw from Mark Mitchell in that first half. But, I mean, man, he was kind of on a scoring page.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple of things he benefited from. The first was some great passing from Kyle Filipowski. Filipowski has become a much more willing passer. That's one of the things that I believe, and it's not necessarily shown up in the numbers, but in the eye test in these last 5 games, Kyle Filipowski has really embraced the role of facilitator and not just trying to score. And so he was the beneficiary of a couple of passes from Flip, and then he was the beneficiary of getting out on the break. He was running the kind of that secondary break, and at least 6, 8, 10 of his points came in that vein where he was just kind of getting that dump off, kind of on the secondary break, and he was able to take the ball right to the hole. And so when you stay active, you run lanes properly, you do what you're supposed to do. The ball finds you. And so that's what happened last night with Mark.
Yeah, good thing the ball found Mark Mitchell because he was ready to deliver several dunks there at the rim. He's been dunking a lot more than we saw last year. I know we've been talking a lot about the Filipowski dunks because of the new hips and that sort of thing, but he's taken it upon himself, Mark Mitchell, that is, to play a little bit more above the rim as well.
He is. And so what you see is when if you watch when Kyle Filipowski gets the ball on the block, you see Mark dive down to the dunker spot, right? The opposite block, way down on the baseline. Okay, so a couple of things there. Either he gets the pass on the cut when he's going to that spot for a dunk, the player turns his head and Mark cuts back door, basically, or he gets down into that dunker spot, and the closer that Filipowski gets to shooting the basketball, that big from Mark will come over. And if they don't rotate quick enough, it's a dump off Filipowski right to the other opposite block, and Mitchell, gets a dunk there. So you're seeing that quite often. And, it is the right way for this Duke team to play, to put somebody in the opposite block for Filipowski to be able to pass to. And if they double. So I believe that's why he's getting them.
Really strong first half for Mark Mitchell. For Duke offensively, they've got just a 2-point lead last night against Syracuse at halftime. What happened in the second half? And we'll talk a little bit more about that after we take our first time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at LinkedIn. At the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question. What's the one move that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team that you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board, a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which is the best place to hire. Hiring is easy when you have that many qualified candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. LinkedIn also knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats, and some might not have the time or resources that they need to hire. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, the process is intuitive, quick, and easy. Once again, post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Let's move forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Also at the game last night for Duke Report, the Durham Devils Club. You've got a lot going on in your world this time of year. We see the coaching staff continues to be put together. You've got a lot to plug here, man.
Yeah, for sure. Duke football, Manny Diaz putting that staff together now. Looks like he's just going to maybe have one or two more assistants that we hear about coming through. Looks, I believe, a cornerback, so I'm not sure who that's going to be, and maybe one other assistant coach. But yeah, that staff is coming together. So yeah, Duke football, Durham Devils Club, working in the NIL space there, and then yeah, Duke Report for basketball, and it's a fun time of year. Before we know it, we'll be talking spring ball and football. So there's a lot going on here. January, February, obviously dedicated to basketball, and so hopefully this Duke team can avoid the January pitfall, right, and avoid the 3 or 4 game losing streak that every now and then will creep up when you hit this part of the schedule.
We've talked about it for the majority of the season so far, but it's a tale of two halves for the Duke basketball team. And last night was no different. Duke went 0 for 9 from three-point range last night. They went 8 for 8 from 3 in the second half. What in the world, Josh?
Not just that, JJ, a regular field goal percentage. In the first half, they were 13 for 35, 37%. In the second half, I mean, this is pretty incredible. 18 for 24 from the field,
Wow.
75% shooting in the second half, including 8 for 8 3-point shooting. Just an incredible display of shooting in the second half for Duke. And one of the things that we haven't really, highlighted because this Duke team hasn't struggled at this yet, but the free throw shooting. Duke was 16 for 18 from the line last night, and you don't really talk about your free throw shooting unless you're bad at it, right? You're not discussing that unless you're missing big free throws. Duke is hitting them, and man, the second half was an absolutely beautiful display of shooting the basketball.
Really strong performance from Duke from shooting from the outside and really wasted no time. Jared McCain has been that premier shooter for this Duke basketball team. We'll talk a little bit about what he was able to do in that second half, but it was like right out of the gates, right? I mean, here's the deal. You're 0 for 9 3-point shooting. Duke has had over 1,000 games in a row that they've made the 3-point shot. And so here's this little stat that's being thrown around, and 30 seconds into the second half, we're watching on TV, and that's what the announcers are wanting to bring up, and Duke wastes no time. All of a sudden, a wing 3 for Jared McCain, and they've got that first one that they see go through the back of the net.
Well, everything changed at halftime because, as we mentioned earlier, Kyle Filipowski was out the majority of the first half, with his foul trouble, and things are different. I mean, when you have Ryan Young or you have a Sean Stewart or whoever in there at the 5, that's different than Kyle Filipowski, and so Duke was able to immediately get back into the regular offensive sets, which includes a lot of two-man game up top, with the point guard, whoever the point guard is, the ball handler, and Filipowski. And that opens up the wings because people have to concentrate on what's going on there. And so, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I do want to shout out not just Jared McCain, Jeremy Roach. It's really funny, JJ. I was thinking about this last night. I meant to ask Coach Shire, but just ran out of time. In all of what's going on, right? You have the Mark Mitchell first half. You have the Jared McCain second half. You have the Kyle Filipowski second half. You have all this stuff. You have Tyrese Proctor, on his way back and really looking good. Just quietly in the background, this senior guard in Jeremy Roach, just another 17 points. Just another I'm going to put in my 15 plus every night. You guys can do your thing. I'm going to hit my mid-range jumpers. I'm going to hit my open threes. I'm going to make good decisions. I'm going to take the ball strong on the break. So shout out to Jeremy Roach. I mean, I know he's going to get his due, but sometimes I feel like Duke fans, and I'm one of them. Sometimes we get concentrating, on the other guys, and we just kind of take Jeremy Roach for granted. And man, this team doesn't need to do that for sure because he is leading for sure.
Well, I'm looking at the numbers in particular, and the one thing we haven't taken for granted is kind of that outside shot so far this season for Roach. I mean, to start 50% through your first 34 attempts. This weekend, however, against Queens, weren't able to mention this, but Jeremy Roach goes 0 for 3 from three-point range. Again, Duke wins by a lot. Doesn't mean a whole lot. Oh, no. We're in love with the percentages there. That's going to hurt a little bit. Last night, Roach kind of corrects it. Goes 2 for 2 from the outside. And kind of, once again, we're seeing this crazy outside shooting for him.
Yeah, and what you didn't have happen last night, and what happens sometimes for Jeremy is, when Duke has one of those offensive possessions that the ball just kind of stalls, sometimes he's the one who gets the ball with 4 seconds left, and he's 5 feet behind the three-point line, and he's got to try to figure something out. And so some of it, even in that really good percentage, there's been a couple of times where he's had to put up a bad three, a fadeaway three, a three with a hand in his face that he probably wouldn't have taken. Last night, the two he hit were in stride. He was wide open. That's the kind of three you want Jeremy Roach taking. So the shooting in the second half was incredible. Coach Shire mentioned this. Duke was hitting Duke shots, and he mentioned a couple of different three-pointers that are Duke shots. The first one is a transition three. Jared McCain, as a true freshman, shoots that transition three as good or better than any Duke player that we've seen recently, for sure. It gives you Luke Kennard vibes. He gives you JJ Redick vibes. He gives you Trajan Langdon vibes, right? Like Andre Dawkins, Seth Curry, like all the good shooters in Duke history. McCain can really do that. And then also the old kick out three, the offensive rebound and resetting and kicking out that's the classic Mike Krzyzewski, 3-point basketball there. But Duke does both of those things really, really well, and they did them at an elite level last night against Syracuse.
No doubt they did. Really impressive for Duke to kind of knock down those good looks in transition. And Jared McCain, to your point, was one of those guys who did that. He's one of the final few things I want to talk about with last night's game before we get into kind of some more big picture Duke stuff at this point. But 4 for 6 from three-point range for Jared McCain last night in the game for Duke. He scores 18 points. It was Mark Mitchell who scored 18 of his 21 points. That, by the way, a new career high for Mark Mitchell with 21. 18 of those came in the first half. Jared McCain finishes with 18 in the game, 14 of his coming in the second half. Holy cow, man, to watch this guy shoot the basketball. Once again, just unbelievable to see him knocking down some of the shots that he's getting. And the energy, the emotion, everything, quickly becoming a fan favorite. You were there last night. You could hear kind of the reactions from guys and that sort of thing. But when you watch him on the television screen, he's certainly a player that this entire fan base seems to be captivating towards.
I mean, his personality is unique, and he's one of the most positive, energetic players that Duke has ever had. If you talk to him after a game, I mean, he's super positive. And a lot of people, laughed at this, but like his TikTok following and like the whole social media thing before he even came to Duke, that's really who he is, though. Like that's part of his real personality. But yeah, I think it's interesting that after the Georgia Tech loss, he had a couple of games there, Georgia Tech previously, where he was like 5 points, 6 points or whatever. In the last 5 games, he's averaging 19.4 points a game. And so, it's almost, and I'm not going to say it's just Jared McCain, but Duke needs that third scorer. For this game, it was Mark Mitchell, Jeremy Roach, and him, and Flip, of course. But you need that third scorer, and Jared seems to be the guy right now. In first half, he struggled a little bit. He took some tough shots with hands in his face, driving to the basket. Once again, he was the victim of a couple of end of shot clock scenarios where he had to get the ball up, and it wasn't a good shot. But in the second half there, he had a stride. And so, I don't know, man. He's the most fundamental true freshman that I've seen play at Duke. The way he dribbles the ball, the way he passes the ball, the way he shoots the ball, the way he defends. I mean, I know that Duke brought him here thinking he was going to be a multi-year player, but good gracious, if I'm a GM in the NBA, I'm thinking, man, late first round, I'm a playoff team. I could use a guy that can just come in and not screw the game up. Man, why not Jared McCain? That's the way I look at it. I'm not trying to speak anything to existence because second year Jared McCain would be great in Durham, but I'm just saying he's got the next level game.
He's incredible. It's been fun to watch so far what he's been able to do in regards to the start of the season for Mr. McCain. Let's continue to talk about Duke basketball, but we need to take one more time out here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. We're back in just a moment here on today's episode. Got to let you know about our friends over at Locked On Sports Today. Again, we're proud to have the first ever national 24/7 streaming platform available with all of our great shows. That's right. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. After this episode of Locked On Blue Devils ends, do me a favor, go check out Locked On College Basketball. Our good friends Isaac Shade and Andy Patton do a remarkable job talking about the league coast to coast, talking about the ACC in particular. The Stoop team is on a roll. Go check them out after you finish up this episode here today. Josh Cox back with us here, starting to wind down our conversation. Just did want to mention this. I mean, obviously, when we've talked about Duke basketball so far this season, strong shooting for the Blue Devils in the second half means less opportunities to go out and rebound the basketball. In those losses, we've been able to kind of point to the rebounding margin not going in Duke's favor. We've got a blip in the numbers because Syracuse did actually walk away with this one. 31 boards for the Orange, 30 for Duke. So they out-rebounded Duke by 1 point, or one rebound, and yet you look at the final score, Josh, and Duke won this game by 20. The spread was 14.5, so Duke covered as well, but I did think that was a little interesting. You don't miss too many shots, so you can't rebound as frequently there in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what it is. I mean, you don't win the game by winning the rebound margin. You know what I mean? And I know that oftentimes does lead to winning the game. But like you said, when you're hitting baskets, you're not getting offensive rebounds. You're not getting those kick outs and those tip outs. And so I can promise you this: if you ask Coach Shire, we can win every game by 20, and we lose the rebounding battle by 1 or 2 a game, he'll say, I'll take it, every time. So, but you're exactly right. And I do think something that we need to be honest with about this team is as this team approaches this stretch of play in the ACC, one thing that I don't believe Duke did a good job of last night, and I don't believe they're going to do a good job of it, period, is continued struggle protecting the rim. There were a lot of dunks last night, a lot of in the paint points from Syracuse. We knew this heading into the season. We knew that Kyle Filipowski is not your prototypical 5 defender. He's doing the best I think he can do at that. He really should be out there on the wing defending, which he did last year, and he actually did a really good job of it last year. But last year we had this guy, I don't know if Duke fans remember him, Derek Lively II. That's right. The starting center for the Dallas Mavericks, catching Luka lobs on a nightly basis.
Yep.
But he was back there protecting that rim. And, you can't do anything about it. Duke didn't land anybody in the portal. Completely get it. I think Mark and Kyle are doing the best they can down low. But if there is an Achilles heel to this team, it's going to be facing a team that just can pound the ball down low and, Duke just maybe won't have the horses. I don't know. But that's something that they're going to have to figure out. Coach Shire knows that. Spoke to it a little bit last night after the game. But that's something just to keep an eye on as a Duke fan, moving forward into ACC play.
All right, so we'll talk about next for this Duke team. They can go deeper into ACC play. Now we're in the heart of the schedule. We're only going to see conference games for the rest of the way, and that includes on Saturday. Duke's got a trip to South Bend. They'll play their second true road game in the ACC after already having played Georgia Tech about a month ago. Notre Dame back in action later tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern. They've got a home game against NC State, and this is a Notre Dame team that's had its fair share of ups and downs throughout the season. They lost by 20 to the Citadel early in the season. They're still sub 500 when you look at the record, 6-7. So if they beat NC State tonight, they're now 500 on the year going into that Duke game. But over the weekend, Notre Dame took it to Virginia. They won by 22 points against Tony Bennett's team, a home game there for the Fighting Irish. But that's what's next for the Duke team, Josh.
That shows you. I mean, well, the question is in the Virginia game, was that more indicative of UVA just not showing up, know? and that's not typical with a Tony Bennett team. But was that, or was that, Notre Dame just really playing, above their heads? I don't know. But I tell you what it does. We can guarantee it tells you this. Anytime you go on the road in the ACC, anytime, there's a chance you're losing that basketball game. I don't care if that team has two conference wins on the season and you're undefeated and you're in, the end of February. If you go on the road in the Atlantic Coast Conference, you have a good chance of losing that basketball game. And so Duke wants to bounce back. I understand it's Notre Dame, and Notre Dame is not UNC. Notre Dame is not Clemson. Notre Dame is not, the upper echelon of the ACC right now. But the fact is this: Duke lost its first road game in Atlanta, does not want to lose its second road game in a row in the Atlantic Coast Conference. You don't want to do that. That's the difference, at the end of the season between, getting that 1 or 2 seed that you want in the NCAA tournament or being that 5 or 6 seed. It's these games right here that matter. It's those games you ought to win. And I would say this too with Duke fans. Sometimes I think sometimes Duke fans get this unrealistic expectations. A win on the road in the ACC is a success. Like, I can see Duke fans right now, if Duke wins this game by 5 points, 7 points, I can hear all the criticism. I can just wait for all the social media armchair quarterbacks, to come through. But to win a game on the road in the ACC is a win. I don't care who it is and how much it is. And so Duke just needs to concentrate between now and the weekend on what do we have to do to come out of South Bend with a victory, because that's the most important thing when it's all said and done.
We will keep talking about it throughout the rest of the week, about this game in particular, Duke versus Notre Dame. Again, tonight, however, the Fighting Irish will play NC State at 9 p.m. Eastern on the ACC Network. Right now, ESPN Analytics and their Basketball Power Index give Duke a 90.6% chance to win that basketball game. So hopefully it's good things coming for Duke over the course of the weekend. Before we get out of here, last thoughts here, Josh. We've got to talk about the Aussie. We have failed to mention Tyrese Proctor, what he means to the whole equation for this Duke team. Last night, he plays his second game since coming back from that ankle injury, played 27 minutes out there on the floor for Duke, actually played more time than Caleb Foster, who started the game. Foster had 21 minutes for Duke. Proctor, again, 27 minutes on the floor last night. He knocks down a couple of three-point attempts, sharing the basketball, had 4 assists, looked really comfortable once again. What did you make of his play? And is he now back in the starting lineup, you think, if you're John Shire? What does that look like?
I mean, yeah, so a couple of things there. First, Coach Shire's mentioned a 6-man starting lineup a little bit, where Caleb is a starter, even though, maybe he wasn't starting, at the beginning of the season. I do think you're going to see Proctor back in the starting lineup this Saturday. I don't know that for sure, but I think they were giving him a couple of games to get back. I know he was on a minutes restriction in the Queens game of 15. He ended up playing 17. Obviously, that got lifted for this game, playing 27. So I do expect to see him back in the starting line. That's no disrespect to Caleb Foster. Caleb is great. As a Duke fan, it's really good when a true freshman is your primary ball handler, and as Foster has been with Proctor out, and you're not concerned.
Yeah,
you're not nervous.
You're still comfortable with everything.
You're very comfortable with him and the ball, and honestly, he's really strong going to the basket. Foster is, and he's going to get his opportunities. The second thing about Proctor is the most impressive thing last night to me was the pass that he made to Mark Mitchell for the dunk. It wasn't a no-look pass per se, but it was an elite level pass. It was a kind of a wraparound pass around a big man back to Mark Mitchell for one of those dunks that you mentioned earlier. But Proctor's court vision is next level, and we knew it was last season. But last season was really about Tyrese figuring out, when do I take that chance? When do I throw that pass that it would look really good if it went through, but it might not. He's really to me choosing his spots better this season. And man, he is a talented point guard. And so I do think you're going to see Tyrese step back into his starting role, and then you'll see that kind of that rotation that we saw, previously in the season where Foster comes off the bench.
Well, let's continue to talk about this Duke team in the days to come. Josh, you'll be with us throughout the rest of this basketball season, of course, as you are year-round. What a fun first conversation of 2024 with you, my friend. I'm excited for many more this year. Thank you for being here today, buddy.
Hey, JJ, me and Jordan, man, are not gonna let you off the hook. We're gonna have a three-person conversation here. We are gonna interview you. We're gonna jump you on Locked On. But no,
I can't wait.
I appreciate it, man, and it's been a great kickoff to the season so far. And go Duke, let's keep winning basketball games.
All right, that's Josh Cox joining us here on today's show. I can't wait for that. We need that three-man broadcast to take place here in 2024. We need more Duke wins to keep going here in the new year, and hopefully this winning streak can extend for the Duke basketball program. That'll do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you, and good day.